Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's Tales. I enjoyed writing them, and hope you enjoy them too. This one is called William Appleby, Seventh Son, and it's a ghost story by Harry Riley. This story is fiction, and resemblance to any person, living or dead, is entirely coincidental. William Appleby was tracing his family tree. He still had old relatives, alive and kicking, to quiz for material. One of his pals was on a similar quest, and it made a good talking point at their local pub. His father, Walter Appleby, had been a miner, but William was married with a daughter and worked as a draftsman. He came from a large family, having 6 brothers, and strangely enough, so did his father. His grandmother used to say William was the 7th son of a 7th son. He'd heard, way back on his father's side, they'd been boatmen, working the canal boats, and before that, Romany gypsies, wandering the highways and byways without a care in the world. And that's the life William would have liked. He was a free soul and felt a great affinity with the travellers. One day, just after his grandmother's death, he was helping his mother and Aunt Grace sort through some bric-a-brac that had surrounded the old lady. A cardboard box had been stuffed under the bed in the spare room, and opening this through a cloud of dust, he found a collection of old photographs, mainly family members. There were a few notes on the back of each. This would help his research. One photo caught his eye. It was the portrait of a striking young woman, created in a studio against a background of potted palms. There was something about the eyes that held him spellbound, something about her beguiling expression that gave the face a haunted look, as though her mind was somewhere else. She was sitting in a rocking chair, wearing a black dress of 1920s style with white lace collar, and she was a beauty. Aunt Grace saw him staring at the photo and came over. "Ah, now that's our Lily. Sad, very sad." "Why, what happened to her?" "That's the family mystery. She disappeared during the last war at the height of the Blitz, living in London. Shortly after marrying your dad's brother Joseph, he was the black sheep of the family, bit of a wrong 'un. He vanished also. Some said his ship was torpedoed, sunk by a U-boat somewhere off the French coast." "Did anybody try and find her?" "We were all too busy getting our lives back together, and anyway, she, of all people, should have been able to look after herself." "Why do you say that?" The old lady sighed. She had the gift of second sight, that one did. She'd go into a sort of trance and speak to dead souls. They'd send back messages through her. Real scary was Lily. William knew what his next step would be. He'd go to London and discover the secret, if there was one, of Aunt Lily's disappearance. There was something about that face which more than intrigued him. He was drawn to it. "Did you know the address in London at the time of her death?" His aunt shook her head. "No, there was such a turmoil at the time. Everybody was leaving the capital." Aunt Grace settled down in her chair, appearing to go to sleep, as old ladies often do. William went back to looking through the pile of photos, but couldn't concentrate, and then his aunt suddenly sat bolt upright. "Yes, that's it, I've got it. It was number 13, Ellington Terrace, not far from the docks. It's probably changed now. I remember it was 13. People were superstitious in those days, but it didn't bother Lily at all." He took the box of photos home, but kept the black and white portrait of Lily by his side, and after explaining his intentions to his wife, took an early night to be fresh for the morrow. Next morning he awoke, feeling this was going to be a special day, one he would remember for the rest of his life. Surprisingly enough, the row of red brick houses by the name of Ellington Terrace was still standing. There were lace curtains at most windows, but at least, he thought, as he wandered by, they're lived in. He couldn't find number 13, and there was a hollow sound from the knocker of number 11. After his second attempt, he heard footsteps coming to the door. An old grey-haired woman opened the door a crack and peered through the chain. "I don't buy at the door." She paused for breath. "I should have said, we don't, but I forgot." He raised his voice, thinking she was deaf. No, I'm not selling. I'm looking for my aunt, Lily Appleby, at number 13, but there isn't one." "Well, you needn't shout. I may be daft, but I'm not deaf, and I'm not Lily either." She smiled at him through broken teeth. "I can't help you." "Hold on. Why no 13? It's important. I've come a long way," he pleaded. The old woman relented, took off the chain and opened the door. "OK then, come in, and I'll tell you." He followed her into the living room, and she sat with him at the Chanel-covered table. There was a number 13, but it was badly damaged by a bomb during the war, and afterwards, when it was rebuilt, they called it 11A. That's the empty house next door. William had noticed the estate agent's "to let" sign at the next house and was grateful for the old girl's information. "Were you living here at the time?" "Yes, this house belonged to my parents." "Did you ever remember the wartime occupants at number 13? "I do remember a young couple who moved in." She chuckled. "They were always arguing." "She was a spiritualist called Madame Lily." "That's it. Funny, I'd forgotten." "My mother attended one once and frightened her to death. Her Uncle Albert spoke to her from the other side and threatened to come back. She never liked him." "Why is the place next door empty?" "The previous people only stayed a few weeks, leaving because of strange noises in the night, and the locals think it's haunted." Williams thanked her and took his leave. 11A Ellington Terrace had been on the agency's books for nearly 2 years. It needed redecorating throughout, and the agent was prepared to almost give it away on a long lease. So when William Appleby said he wanted the keys to show his wife around that afternoon, the agent was only too keen. He took down William's personal details, address and employment, and handed him the keys for the rest of the day, saying he had to make a quick decision as there were 4 couples keen to have such a desirable address. The musty smell battered his nostrils as soon as he went into 11A. The house was a fully furnished residence, according to the estate agent's notes. Worn-out lino and a tired old sofa spoke of neglect. The kitchen was filthy. There was nothing for him here, and he was desperate to leave. He walked back towards the front door and gazed in the cracked mirror over the fireplace. Hairs came up on the back of his neck and he shivered. Reflected in the glass was a framed portrait. It was a photograph of Aunt Lily. But this couldn't be. Lily's home had been virtually gutted and rebuilt on the site. He rushed through every room, but there was nothing else to see. He scanned the house agent's details again, but he'd seen all the rooms. Was there a cellar? Nothing was mentioned, so he went outside to the small overgrown yard. Near the back door, and hinged to the house wall, was a wooden flap, virtually invisible and covered by weeds and rubbish. It had been a cellar chute for coal deliveries. Frenziedly, he forced the lid open. The stench was unbearable. As his eyes got accustomed to the dark interior, he saw the cluster of human bones and knew he'd found the last remains of Aunt Lily. Going back inside, he took a last look at the photo on the wall, but the wall was blank. The photo had gone. End.